You're listening to European Startup Universe Talks, a podcast where we meet with startup founders, angel investors, and major stakeholders of the European startup ecosystem. They let us in on the do's and don'ts of running a startup, their career story, and the process of succeeding as well as failing. In other words, everything of interest to startup nerds. European Startup Universe is a massive network of opportunities for EU tech startup founders, connecting them with the best minds of the EU tech community, with unicorn founders, known investors, and experts. We have brought together European countries to join forces and launch startup programs suitable for their nation's tech founders. ESU aims to give access to opportunity for funding and expansion across EU countries. Welcome to European Startup Universe Talks. I'm Maritza, and today I'm here with Guy Krief, an entrepreneur and angel investor. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you. Can you tell me about your experience as a startup founder?
Yeah, sure. So, look, I've founded companies. The first company I founded was a pastry shop. So not much to do with technology. That I sold afterwards. Then I was in a marketing technology company called Upstream, and I was working on a technology that basically became a spin-off. So it just, it raised a Series A round from the US and it became a separate company. And so I am the co-founder of Persado, which is a spin-off out of Upstream. But I think on this particular one, I'm getting the title of co-founder, without having done a lot of the hard work. So because I was working mostly on the technology, I didn't really feel, the stress of either cash, fundraising, or these kind of things. I just got a very cheap, great new title on my CV, which is to be the co-founder of Persado. And then I also co-founded a Bryq, Bryq, which is a talent intelligence platform. This one, I worked on the technology, but then I invested my own funds in starting recruiting people. And the moment it started getting onto, becoming a product that needed to be commercialized and scale, that's when I did put the right people in charge. So people like a real CEO, someone who could actually take it onwards. So these are the company where I've been actively involved as a founder, and then there are companies where I'm let's call it a founding investor. I have a few of these. So from a restaurant you might know in Athens, called the Nolan, and then we did a few other restaurants, and now we have 3 of them, to a fashion technology company in the US called References, and a couple of others.
Okay, that's an impressive CV. What made you go from starting a pastry shop and then going into the technology field? I mean, it's a big jump.
Look, before the pastry shop, I found myself a little bit by accident working for what would become the first internet service provider in France, called Wanadoo at the time. Then is now called Orange, owned by France Telecom. So my first kind of real job was in technology, but a little bit by accident. So before the pastry shop, I was actually involved in technology. Initially started there as an intern and found myself writing the specs for what would be the welcome portal for people at the time using a small CD to actually get their internet connection. So it kind of happened by accident.
Okay. As your experience as an entrepreneur, do you have some lessons that you consider to be the biggest lessons that you've learned throughout the journey?
Look, there are cheesy ones and easy to say now, like, everything happens for a reason, or these kind of things, which is always easier to say, a few years afterwards, when you're going through the difficult times, you just feel things are a bit unfair. Look, for me, the most important thing, and it took me a lot of time to understand it for myself, is I do believe everyone should really, first of all, they should understand what are their strengths and weaknesses. For me, it is very, very clear, for example, that I don't feel at ease when a startup starts scaling up. I just then, I prefer to pass it on to other people, for example. I guess I'm just not a sales guy. There are like, there's a big list of things that I just cannot do, and or that I'm not good at, let's say. And the thing is, if you realize that early on, I believe it makes your life and your journey, much easier. You can just go and seek help, get the right co-founder, surround yourself with the right people, instead of struggling at things you're just not a good fit for. So I think that that's a very important thing. And usually, at least for myself, it's actually the things I like to do. What I like to do is what I'm good at. So, I wish I had realized earlier that all these things I really dislike, it's also because I'm really bad at those.
So like identifying your weaknesses and then surrounding yourself with people who can complement those weaknesses within you is
100%. For many, many years, for example, also I was really reluctant to start things that involved selling, like, actively selling, anything that was kind of a little bit B2B enterprise. I was just avoiding it. But at some point I realized some people are really great at it, and, you just hire these people, and they, they are skilled. You don't need to, it's not because I dislike it and I suck at it that it cannot be done. Some people are really, they can do it, and very, very well.
Mm. Do you feel that there is a misconception about being a startup founder that a lot of people get wrong?
Look, I do think that at least in certain parts of the world, and Greece is one of them right now, the startup founder, I feel, is a little bit like the new rock star. People kind of, make it, like, see it much nicer than what it really is. They just get exposed to kind of, I don't know, the few articles that startup founders get in the press, and some features that they have, or some interviews that they give. But that's not, that's not even 0.5% of the time founders really, really spend on their company. The rest is very often quite brutal. And you need to enjoy risk. You need to enjoy uncertainty. There are very, unglamorous moments when you're building your company. So in terms of the misconception, I do think, very often we see these illustrations when you have the tip of the iceberg, and that's like a success, fundraising, press articles about your fundraising. Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Usually below that, and pardon my French, but you're really eating a lot of shit. I mean, it's hardcore. And by the way, I don't feel myself. I'm not really built for that. I mean, it's really painful. You have moments where, you feel like, you feel like, you're not worth much. You're getting rejected. It is not for everyone, and it is not as pleasant as a few interviews will make it look like.
Mm. I think that's a very healthy perspective to keep in mind. And it is, as you say, that you only see this tiny little part of it, and that is not representative of how it is. And a lot of people never reach that level anyways, and we don't really see that either. So having a more humble perspective like this, I think it's very valuable for people.
Yeah.
You have shared a little bit of, touched upon it before, but do you have like a top 3 best advice for early stage founders?
So look, first of all, we should really put a huge disclaimer, which I'm really, I've never been through this kind of like, proper cycle of funding my company and then managing it and then scaling it up and then exiting at millions. I've never done that full cycle. I've been very often at the very beginning of companies. At some point I was the CEO of a large one, but I've never done that full circle, mostly because I don't think I'm actually skilled to do all of it. But so the first thing is a huge disclaimer. My advice is not worth the advice of someone who has done it all. But at least as an investor and as an advisor to many of these companies, or just reflecting on my own involvement in some of them, look, there's the first thing. So now, as an active angel investor, I'm getting a lot of pitches, and the first thing is, I do believe, and I've experienced it myself with a failed messaging startup that I did at some point. I failed very, very fast. I'm very good at failing. In 6 months, it was over. I do believe that the first thing is, you need to understand what it is that you're solving, and you need to have, when you're going with something. For example, given my age, I'm not the right person to design anything whatsoever for teenagers. I just don't get it. I just don't understand them. So I think, many times people are trying to solve problems that I am not sure they really understand, or they really identified themselves. It's so much easier when you see something that's wrong, or there is a pain point somewhere. This is the magical, I believe, the magical time where actually this is an opportunity to go and build something that's going to solve that problem. The moment you've experienced the pain, you're in the best position to go and solve it. So that's the first one. The second one is, and this I'm seeing it so much, the lack of focus. There are so many very, very young companies going after too many things at the time. And, in a sense, it's understandable. You kind of feel that, you're going to try 3-4 things and one of them is going to work. My take is that reality is quite different. It means that you're going to do all these 3-4 things in a very mediocre way. You're not going to put everything you have in any of them, properly. And that will actually, that will not allow you to understand what is the fine tuning that, one direction needs to be successful. What are the pivots that you're going to have to make that one thing successful, and be very, very good at this one particular thing. And it's not an easy decision. You do see many companies that are getting some revenues from one product, they're getting some revenue from a slightly different one, and it's a very tough choice to decide to just, okay, I'm just going to cut this part of my company because I want to focus on what I think is the most promising one. It's a very, very tough decision to make. I do think that a focus is so crucial. It is so important. And the last one, we've touched a little bit upon it, but you absolutely need to get surrounded by the right people. That's gonna make you or break you. I mean, you can't do it all, and some people are very good at things that you usually cannot do very, very well. So, like your co-founder, your first hires, this is so important.
That was some solid, real good advice. I would like to ask you a bit about you touched upon it, but your angel investments. How did you get started with that?
So look, my very first angel investment was not in a technology company, so it was in a restaurant. And the way it happened is that I had a friend who had a very successful restaurant, and he wanted to open a new one with kind of an upcoming chef, and he had investment lined up and he was ready to do so here in Greece. And then the summer of 2015 happened with, the banks closed and capital controls, and the country being in a very in a very uncomfortable position. And he didn't have any way to open his new restaurant. And at the time I was living in the US, and I was his only access to investment, because at some point, half drunk, I had told him that, if you want to do something, your restaurants are so good that I like it. I like them so much, I'm willing to invest. But I didn't mean much of it. It was just like drunk talk. And I did find myself in the summer of 2015 with this friend asking for a proper 6-figure investment, money to be wired from the US to capital control Greece, to like a place where no one was sending money at the time. So that was my first angel investment. And I remember thinking about it as kind of a friendship tax at the time, like being sure that, I've just lost my money right there. That's money that I'm wiring just because I love my friend. By the way, it turned out to be the best investment I've ever made, but that's another story. So that was my very first one. Then what happened? Then at some point when I came back from the US to Greece, I needed a car. You can call me cheap, but I hate spending money on cars, and I never ever want to buy a new car. I just think it's a waste of money, especially when you have a dog and a kid. And so I wanted a used car. And there's a problem of trust when you buy a used car. And so then there was a great service offering cars that had been checked by them, offering insurance, offering a guarantee, everything like if it was a new car. And I used the service and I was so pleased by it that I started looking for a way to invest in this company, because I was just, I was convinced that what they're doing is so great. And that was my second investment. And then I started doing more. Some of them are kind of, people I've worked with, and I really value what they do. Others are, they've asked me to be an advisor. I really liked working with them, so I participated in their next round. And each of them kind of has a different story, but I've never done something that either I don't understand or is not being done by people I admire or trust, kind of.
Okay, so would you say that you invest more based on feeling or based on actual results or like logic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Look, there are multiple ways to look at that. First of all, it's not like I'm a professional investor right now. So I'm not investing other people's money. If I was to ever do so, I think this requires you to be way more kind of like objective and kind of being able to back your decision using data. Up to now, if we take each of them as an example, I had a friend who had done some great restaurants, great success. So that's a data point, right? And he was going with someone he had worked with who looked as a very promising chef and opening a new restaurant. And I found myself investing in that. So I don't think these are the data points in the traditional, sense of the term, but that's still a data point. And the same thing when I invested in Spot a Wheel, this used car company. I had used the service. I knew it was just an awesome service, and I knew that this is a very serious problem in certain countries. So yeah, I didn't I didn't have a market study. I didn't know, kind of like what's the market size and these kind of things. But I did have some pointers that, indicated that, all right, it looks like a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like maybe you took a different route maybe than other angel investors typically do. Or would you say that yourself?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not super familiar about like how other angels will work, but I do think so. Look, so yeah, I did something that was related the restaurant aside, but there are things in which I think I will not invest because I don't understand them, or I'm just not attracted by the space. So I don't know, if you take gambling, I'm just not interested in gambling. So I don't want to get into it. If you take fintech, I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. That there are no. What is being done in fintech is not that exciting to me. So yeah, I guess. But I still believe that, and I might be wrong, most angel investors, it's a relationship game. I think, like the deals get introduced, someone suggests something, there is a friend of a friend. It's a bit different. And by the way, a lot of at least in the early stages, a lot of your network, your former colleagues, acquaintance, I think a lot of that is very, very important. I'm not saying that's the only way to get funding, and I'm not saying that everybody that's 100% of the deals, but this is a very important factor.
Yeah, definitely. It is having connections and having the network is often the way to really get what you're looking for. So it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to add to the conversation?
Look, not so much like in terms of important things, but certainly, at least the way we presented it initially, it sounded like I presented obviously what were the successes. I've done at least double the amount in failures, in either failed investment, failed attempts to do something. I mean, I do really believe that either on the entrepreneur side or the investing side, someone needs to really be ready and willing to fail. Just, all right, if you don't try anything, you're not going to fail. And that's a cliche, and I understand it. But there is just many of the things we discussed earlier, they happen, or I met someone with whom we did something successful at some point, but we actually met doing something that was a failure. So you really need to kind of have like the emotional capacity to go through failure, rejection, and lows, and understand that these are actually feeding you for something down the road, which is very easy to say now, sitting in a Zoom interview with you. It's very cool, and that's fine. When you're going through it, it actually is not pleasant.
I like the transparency, and I think that is some very valuable words of advice. And I think also that it's one of those things that cannot be said enough. It's really important things to have in mind. Thank you a lot for being here today.
Thank you. It was fun. Thanks.
You've been listening to European Startup Universe Talks. If you want to know more about us, go to thestartupuniverse.org and follow us on social media.